Ethan sat at the kitchen table, his hands clasped tightly together, trying to steady his thoughts as he scanned the usual chaos of the morning routine. The sounds of his children laughing and playing in the living room were supposed to bring him joy, but today they felt like a distant echo of normalcy. He glanced at Sarah, his wife of 10 years, as she rushed past him, phone pressed to her ear, her voice a mixture of annoyance and business-like determination. But that wasn't all he noticed. There was a cold distance in her eyes, one that hadn't been there before, as if she were already somewhere else entirely. The tension was palpable, a low hum under the surface of their life together. Ethan had always been the protector, the stabilizer, someone who took pride in providing for his family. Yet now, all he felt was a creeping sense of betrayal, gnawing at him and urging him to dig deeper, to question what lay hidden beneath the facade of his seemingly perfect life. He shook his head, suppressing the gnawing anxiety, and turned to his laptop to check the family finances. A crinkle of unease twisted in his stomach as he saw discrepancies he couldn't ignore. Unexplained charges racking up on the family credit cards, sudden expenses that didn't align with their budget. His heart raced as he unearthed charge after charge that pointed to something dark, a different life coursing parallel to his, one that didn't involve him. Sarah's whispers on the phone, the late nights away when she had work, the indifference that had crept into her touch. It all began to piece together like a broken puzzle that had once depicted their happy family. The moment of realization hit him like a cold shower. He was being played. Confronting the truth was suddenly as urgent as a fire alarm blaring in the night. Heart-pounding, Ethan decided he needed evidence. The way Sarah flitted around with her phone made him suspicious. He needed to find the evidence that would rip off the cheap veneer she had painted over their crumbling marriage. Days passed slowly as Ethan became a quiet observer in his own house. He watched Sarah's interactions, her body language, the way she flinched when he walked into a room. He was lost in a world of lingering despair, each moment stretched thin with uncertainty. His resolve hardened, morphing the doubts swirling in his mind into a commitment to uncover the betrayal. He began to look through her messages when she left her phone unattended, carefully plotting the best time to strike. Then one evening, as rain drummed against the windows, the storm outside mirroring his internal turmoil, the breakthrough came. Leaving the room, Sarah's phone lit up with a message that nearly screamed for his attention. The name David flashed on the screen, and with it, an incendiary mix of emotions erupted within him. He hadn't recognized the name initially, but as he read the messages, the fragments of flirtation led to deeper arrangements. "Can't wait for you tonight, love," and "I miss your warmth," rang like glass shattering in silence. Proof of her infidelity laid bare before him. A quiet rage ignited within Ethan, consuming him. This David, whoever he was, had stolen his wife right from under his nose. And there it was, the ultimate betrayal. He pictured Sarah's smile as she texted David, the warmth in her voice as she spoke of plans that never included him, her husband. The betrayal clutched at him, but in that moment of despair, he also felt something shift. Anger became fuel, not just a reaction. It became a plan. Ethan's mind started racing, imagining the various ways he could dismantle Sarah's life in a way that mirrored the devastation she had wrought on his. No more would he play the innocent bystander in this twisted play. He initiated a series of covert moves, tracking expenses through shared accounts, digging up financial records, and logging Sarah's secrets with an almost surgical precision. Each discovery strengthened his resolve and sharpened his focus. He was no longer a victim. He was the storm ready to break. Ethan's anger morphed into strategic thinking. If he had to dismantle the world Sarah and David had built with the shards of his trust, he would do it methodically. He would expose them to everyone they knew and obliterate the life they pretended to have. The day of reckoning came when he found enough evidence to confront both Sarah and David. It would all culminate in the most public of displays, a corporate event where too many eyes and ears would witness the tumult he was about to unleash. The stage was set, and he felt the anticipation surge through him as if he were preparing to take the first step on a long-awaited stage, ready to unveil the twisted plot. But before that, he had one more task to tackle. He reached out to some of their mutual friends, gently letting slip bits of what he had discovered. The friends had no idea the storm brewing behind those walls, but the seeds of doubt and disdain were already starting to take root. By the time the event rolled around, Ethan's heart thudded with both excitement and trepidation. The conference hall glittered with lights and metal, a veneer of glamour that masked the chaos beneath. He stood at the entrance, a mere spectator, while Sarah and David reveled in their false sense of security. But soon enough, whispers began circling the hall like a gathering storm. Those who knew of the affair turned their disdainful glances towards Sarah and David. Their warm smiles turned brittle as Ethan approached, the tension palpable as he prepared to strike. "Sarah, David," Ethan called out, his voice booming across the crowded room, causing heads to turn. The smug looks on their faces fell away as dread dripped into their eyes. "I found something shocking," he continued. Whispers erupted, the laughter shifting to nervous murmurs. He pulled out his phone, lifting it high for everyone to see. The messages lit up the screen in bright letters. "Is this what true love looks like?" The room fell silent, every eye on them as Ethan unleashed the chain of events, laying bare the twisted love affair and bringing it into the light. The shockwaves shattered the air like glass, and Ethan reveled in the fury that tilted in his favor. There they stood, unmasked and stripped bare, surrounded by their own friends who now turned on them as if they had always known something was amiss. In their moment of mortification, Ethan saw Sarah's true colors. The mask she had worn with ease now lay fractured at her feet. Her eyes fluttered with desperation as she tried to muster the remnants of their facade. When she attempted to plead, the whimper that escaped her rosy lips only fueled Ethan's fire. "Forgive you?" he spat, a bitter laugh escaping his throat. "You think I'll ever forgive you? After everything?" The warmth of revenge washed over him, turning into the sweetest satisfaction as he added, "You have a different kind of love now, don't you?" He watched as David, the man who had stolen everything, tried to justify himself, only to realize that there was no redeeming cry that could save him from the hands of karma. He had become guilty by association, crumbling under the wave of shame just as much as Sarah. Their world, he envisioned, would collapse under the weight of their lies. The atmosphere crackled with tension, a charged silence enveloping the hall as the revelation came crashing down. Whispers escalated into an uproar, the rippling disbelief echoing painfully through Ethan's ears. Sarah's face contorted into a grimace, her carefully sculpted image obliterated in an instant. The mocking laughter from their friends sliced through the air. These people who had once rallied around them now turned from loyal supporters into jeering onlookers. "Ethan, please," Sarah's voice trembled, a desperate attempt to salvage what was left of her dignity. "You don't need to do this. We can talk about it." The contempt felt in the curious glances surrounding them fueled Ethan's satisfaction. "Talk? What more is there to say? You've already said it all in your little texts." He gestured toward the phone's screen, now illuminated with the damning words they had shared in private. The very essence of her infidelity was laid bare, and the repercussions were cascading in real time. David tried to interject, but his voice was drowned out by the collective jeering from their circle of friends. "You thought you could just take everything? My trust? My family? Why didn't you just have the decency to call it quits with me first?" Surrounded by so many witnesses, the gravity of the moment sunk into Sarah's features like lead. She stood before him, vulnerable, exposed, and utterly defeated. The tears welling in her eyes reflected the horror of her consequences, though Ethan felt none of their weight. Instead, he fed off their despair, drawing strength from the betrayal she had wrought upon him. Echoes of contempt and accusations began to fly through the crowd. Friends who had previously turned a blind eye to Sarah's growing distance, her late-night outings, began to connect the dots. The cohesive facade began to fracture. Someone in the back called out, "I can't believe I trusted you," and the relentless tide of resentment rushed forth like a tidal wave. When Ethan caught David's eye, he saw nothing but a feeble attempt to maintain composure that failed miserably. If anyone underestimated Ethan's resolve, it was they who were tragically mistaken. He savored the power shift, the sweet transition from the shadows into the glaring light of honesty. "Look at you now," he spat at David. "You thought you were getting an upgrade, didn't you?" With every proverbial knife he twisted deeper, he could feel the weight of the truth rising. Ethan turned to the crowd, leaning into their shared anger. This is who they are, self-serving and manipulative, swapping loyalty for a cheap thrill. The crowd's murmurs collectively swelled into an uproar, a cacophony of judgment, sudden revelations blooming in their minds. Friends were confronted with the choice of siding with the betrayer or the betrayed, and their complicity began to unravel. It was a reckoning, and Ethan stood tall amidst it, a bastion of moral clarity against the storm of deception. And then, noticing a shift in David's demeanor, Ethan pressed further. "What's it going to be, David? Are you going to slink away now that the truth is out?" His voice shot through the crowd, commanding attention like a spotlight directed at the two stripped of their masquerade. "Or are you going to stand here and defend your decisions? You gave up everything, and for what? That?" He waved dismissively at Sarah, drawing laughter from onlookers, who had been spared from the secrets that encased his life. The look of panic on David's face unsettled him, but not as much as the chilling realization of isolation beginning to set in. The crowd shifted, separating itself from the entwined entities of betrayal. Guilt coursed thick in the air like smoke, and his previously loyal friends reflected the same disdain, now glimmering in Ethan's eyes. "You've lost not just your marriage, but everything that made you who you are." Ethan witnessed, in that fleeting moment, the brilliant collapse of Sarah and David's world. The friends who had once been pillars of support now formed a stark wall, blocking their access to social validation. He saw repeated expressions of betrayal mirrored across their faces as the reality of treachery set deeper. This was justice served cold. In the chaos that ensued, Sarah could only watch helplessly, the mounting disbelief of her friends striking like daggers in her heart. The once vibrant connection among their network turned hollow, reduced to hushed whispers and pointed stares. "You think you're the victim?" Ethan continued, gaze piercing with an intensity that felt suffocating. "You will reap what you've sown." The curtain dropped, the performance ended, a grim reality laid out upon the stage. But this wasn't merely about exposing infidelity. This was Crucible Point, a fulcrum upon which their lives teetered on the brink of devastation. In the aftershocks of the confrontation, Ethan barely registered his own thoughts about revenge. Instead, he reveled in being the arbiter of his truth, standing before the world reborn from ashes, a man who had taken back control. When afterwards their former friends began to step away, muttering jubilant disbelief, Ethan found an unexpected sense of closure. He hadn't merely dismantled their relationship, he had secured his standing, his place in life's hierarchy. He could feel the weight of righteousness propelling him forward. While folding her arms protectively, Sarah's sobs punctuated the chatter among their friends. Yet, it was no longer resonating with the rawness he once felt for her. Instead, the atmosphere thickened with justice, triumph, and the clarity of lessons learned. This was the moment when Ethan had fully unleashed his fury. "I won't forgive you, Sarah. Not for what you took from me," he said. "You'll learn that the consequences of betrayal run deep. Just as easily as you severed your ties with me, I will ensure you are left with nothing." The finality of his words pulsated in the air, absolute and unyielding, rendering irreversible closure to their tumultuous saga. There was no hope for reconciliation, no semblance of forgiveness to punctuate the anguish that dwelled between them. Ethan turned away, leaving Sarah and David in the rubble of their shattered lives. Not only was the public decisively on his side, but he relished the sweet agony of their defeat. The wheels of karma continued to spin, and as he walked away, he knew one thing for certain. The next chapter wouldn't just see him recover, it would see him thrive. He could already hear the echoes of the bright future awaiting him on the other side of this confrontation, free from the bonds that had once tied him down. As tensions subsided and the whispers settled, Ethan emerged from the storm, focused and resolute, ready to reclaim his life and build a future structured around integrity and strength. In the wreckage of judgment against his betrayers, he understood that some wounds do not heal, and that some people indeed do not deserve forgiveness. The remnants of that public confrontation lingered in Ethan's mind like smoke from a fire that had finally been extinguished. The exhilaration of exposure ebbed slowly, but it was replaced by a steely resolve that settled over him like armor. No longer was he that passive husband watching his life drift away beneath layers of deceit. Now, he was architecting a new existence, one that was solid, unwavering, and deserved. Days slipped into weeks, and the fallout from the confrontation at the corporate event spiraled outward. What had started as an intimate betrayal had morphed into a public spectacle, singing songs of societal justice wherein Ethan embodied the vengeful hero. Friends of Sarah and David drifted away, awkwardly avoiding Ethan in hallways, while murmurs spread about Sarah's malfeasance like wildfire. Whispers turned into laughter, and laughter morphed into disdain, a social crucible in which both of them were rapidly being forged into pariahs. Ethan relished the slow-motion spectacle. It was a kind of revenge, one he hadn't initially plotted for but soon grew fond of. While navigating the maze of normalcy at work, he felt the energy in the boardroom shift whenever conversations rubbed against the topic of fidelity and honor. And whenever someone brought up David, his once colleague, Ethan felt waves of satisfaction blend with indignation. He had emerged from the darkness and exposed the light of truth. Both Sarah and David were left floundering in their own compelling narratives of failure. One evening, as he was putting the kids to bed, his phone buzzed with a message from Amy, one of his former mutual friends with Sarah. She had been one of the first to hear about the repercussions of Sarah's betrayal, and in her message, Amy expressed a desire to meet. The entreaty evoked a mix of nostalgia and bitterness. Ethan had little trust left for those who previously aligned with the betrayal, yet the curiosity was too inviting to resist. Over coffee in a quiet cafe, Amy shifted nervously in her seat, as though grappling with the weight of an unsaid apology. "Ethan, I'm really sorry for how we all reacted. I can't believe what Sarah did. It has been shocking." Ethan didn't need the sympathy. He needed clarity. "I appreciate you coming to talk, Amy, but understand I'm still processing this. She was my wife. This isn't just about betrayal. It's about trust erased." The weight of those words hung heavy between them. He could see the regret in her eyes, but sympathy was no longer a balm for him. "Of course," she replied, her gaze carrying an almost pleading quality. "But also, many of us are just trying to figure out how to handle this situation. You have to know, society turns quickly. They want to know where to place the blame. And you think it's reasonable to forgive her?" His voice rose slightly. "This isn't an abstract discussion of morality. It was my life, and this was her choice." The uncomfortable silence stretched long enough to render the cafe background noise useless. Amy finally spoke again, her voice small. "I think people can make mistakes, even our closest friends. Do you really believe that? That being close absolves betrayal?" Ethan's frustration seeped outwards, like an unseen crack in a foundation. Each new layer of discovery further cemented the goal of never looking back. "Not absolution," she corrected. But maybe understanding." Ethan leaned back, absorbing her words while he formulated a reply. He didn't need to provide an audience for Sarah's mistakes, nor could he forget the emotional carnage that played out before his eyes. "I've learned some hard truths about trust and commitment, Amy. It's not something you just repair with conversation. It takes action." The coffee continued to grow cold as their conversation flowed, battling through accusations and defenses, and eventually leading them to some common ground of sorts. Ethan listened, but not everyone was blessed with forgiveness. While her intentions may have been sincere, the trust had already fractured. He realized his journey wasn't just about revenge, but reconstructing the very fabric of his identity. After the meeting, thoughts swirled through his mind. He wasn't interested in understanding Sarah. He was interested in his future. Torn between who he had been and who he was becoming, Ethan vowed to turn outward instead of dwelling on betrayal. He began to put himself first, something he hadn't truly done since the first child was born. The next logical step involved locking down their financial affairs. The investigations into their finances bore fruit, and the reality was not just devastating, it was empowering. With meticulous planning, he finalized the divorce proceedings, armed with irrefutable evidence and conditions that would ensure he retained the lion's share of their assets. The bitterness brewed a storm within him, one that included both retribution against Sarah and protection of what he had left, his children, their security, and a life rebuilt from the ashes. As the divorce battle commenced, it brought with it renewed intensity. Ethan had spent the better part of his life sacrificing for Sarah, mooring himself as her pillar. This time, he became a hawk, vigilant, swift, unyielding. Sarah, now penned into a corner, maneuvered unsuccessfully, attempting to play the victim role, but the weight of her marital choices hung heavy as a veil smothering her credibility. During court appearances, the judge, once sympathetic, soon became a spear of justice as Ethan laid out evidence of Sarah's frivolous expenses and emotional betrayal in calculated detail. The pitiful tone of Sarah's excuses could hardly contend against the montage portrayed in black and white. Monetary transactions reflecting dinners, receipts from hotels, and truth wrapped in betrayal. Time and again, her vitality faded, with each claim Ethan backed with hard facts. When it all culminated in the courtroom, Ethan stood taller. It was an experience eclipsed by a realization that shattered expectations. He was no longer a husband holding on to faith. He was a man claiming justice. The room buzzed with anticipation, the atmosphere crackling with his building pressure. With a calculated calm, he presented his case, carefully illustrating not only the case for divorce, but the claim for damages associated with her betrayal. The verdict led to Ethan securing not just the house, but also full custody of the children, with a substantial financial settlement. Figureheads of betrayal had struggled to hide the rising tide from dawn until dusk. But it was clear now. Their predictions washed away like footprints pressed into the sand. With his children beside him and restoration to his integrity intact, Ethan walked out of the courthouse feeling liberated. Behind him lay the chaotic yearning for reconciliation, but ahead stretched bright possibilities just awaiting his signature. As they walked into the sunlight, the warmth wrapped around them like a soft blanket, and Ethan could almost breathe again. He didn't need Sarah's validation or anyone else's approval. The chains of the past had finally shattered, and he was free to reclaim his life, a life where he was not merely the victim of their mistakes, but the champion of his future. That evening, as he tucked his children into bed, Ethan saw the glimmers of hope woven into their smiles. Each day that passed was one filled with endless possibilities, a narrative no longer bound by the shadows of betrayal that had threatened to ensnare him. And there he thrived, turning the pages of his own story with jubilant anticipation, driven by the promise of what lay ahead. The weeks following the courtroom victory felt like walking on air. A newfound sense of triumph buoyed Ethan as he molded his reality into something positive, something unrecognizable from the life he had previously led. Each day, he woke up more energized, stronger, not by mere chance, but from the ongoing journey of self-discovery that had unfurled from the ashes of betrayal. His children became his focal point, their laughter and joy rekindling a deep sense of purpose he had momentarily lost in the fog of despair. As summer approached, Ethan filled their days with activities, trips to the local pool, weekend camping excursions, and movie nights, where their laughter echoed throughout the house. It was in these moments that Ethan realized the profound resilience of the human spirit. He poured his attention into nurturing a supportive environment, restoring the bonds with his children, and cultivating memories that would become an antidote to their previous turbulence. It felt invigorating to teach them resilience, honesty, even compassion, despite his own circumstances. Gradually, the buzz from the separation faded into amicable exchanges between him and Sarah. It was a cold surrender, one free from love or longing, but marked by a mutual understanding. There would be no reconciliation. The children remained a shared thread between them, and Ethan knew he needed to navigate this new landscape with prudence. Establishing boundaries became paramount. He was determined to redefine parenthood, establishing a co-parenting system that kept the focus squarely on their children's well-being. However, familiar shadows from the past occasionally crept into their interactions. Sarah, now lacking the support of their social circle, oscillated between desperation and a facade of composure. She attempted to manipulate feelings sparking from the prior love they had shared, hinting through conversations at wanting to revisit what had been lost. But Ethan remained resolute, unconvinced by her plight or her newly projected vulnerability. One crisp afternoon, she called him, her tone laden with deliberation. "Ethan, can we just meet to discuss the kids? I want to make sure everything is smooth for them," she suggested, but an undertone of pleading coated her words. "Sure, we can meet," he responded, trying to keep his tone neutral. "But let's keep things clear and focused just on the kids. I think it's best that personal matters remain in the past." As they arranged to meet in a nearby park, the air thickened with unspoken tension. Ethan arrived early, seated on a bench as he watched the trees sway gently in the wind, preparing himself for the imminent conversation. Sarah arrived moments later, fidgeting with her hair, a nervous gesture he recognized as an indicator of her internal struggle. When she approached, Ethan braced himself. "Hey," she said, her voice deceptively calm. "I just thought we could discuss how we plan to handle the summer break, with travel plans and who will have the kids when, logistics." "Right," Ethan replied, steeling himself against any emotional pull. "Let's get into it." As they began to outline their calendar, there came brief moments of civility when laughter would poke through their practiced detachment. They shared tales of the kids' silliness, but it was purely about efficiency, lacking depth. Then, the vibe shifted as the conversation thread began to veer dangerously close to intimacy. "Things have been tough for me since everything," Sarah said, the veneer of confidence slipping. "I really didn't realize how much I valued what we had until it was too late." Ethan's heart hardened. "You made your choices, Sarah. I'm not the one who walked away from our marriage." A moment lingered between them, thick with unresolved emotions. He could see her waging a silent war inside. For a fleeting second, he almost felt pity. Almost. "Ethan," she said quietly, "I want to make things right. I never wanted to hurt you. I just..." "Don't," he interrupted, feeling anger rising like steam. "You can't unring that bell. I have no desire for any sort of reconciliation, and frankly, I think it'd be healthier for the kids if you stopped thinking about trying to salvage what's been broken so badly." She fell silent, her eyes reflecting a swirl of regret and desperation. Ethan understood her pain in those fleeting moments. But the requirement for closure does not imply reconciliation or forgiveness. "Fine," she said finally, a chilling resignation set in her tone. "I just want us to put the kids first. I don't expect anything else from you." "Good," he replied tersely, sensing the barrier they had established, solidifying around them. The meeting wrapped up in an abrupt silence, both deciding to retreat while nursing their unhealed wounds. Over the following months, the co-parenting schedule found a rhythm as summer unfolded. Ethan saw the children thriving, their spirits blooming in a forgiving atmosphere. Yet, even in the joy, moments of darkness crept in, as glimpses of Sarah's struggles filtered back into his life. Neighborhood whispers told tales of her social alienation, The very community that had rallied around Ethan now turning a blind eye to Sarah's existence. The isolation she had fostered churned inside him a complicated cocktail of conflicting emotions. One afternoon, after dropping the kids at Sarah's, Ethan spotted her standing forlornly on the sidewalk, gazing aimlessly. He felt an immediate hesitation. Part of him wanted to walk away, to maintain the distance he had fought so hard to secure. But another voice beckoned with compassion. He approached. "You okay?" was all he felt compelled to ask. Her eyes were puffy, tears seeping through. "I'm just struggling. I know I messed up, and I'm doing everything I can to fix it for the kids. But, look, Sarah, I can't help you fix what's already broken." "You need to find your footing on your own," he stated bluntly, but internally he felt the weight of understanding settle deep. She had chosen her path, and while he had his reservations about her well-being, he would not allow her to ensnare him into her emotional chaos. "Right," she murmured, backing away slightly, retracing steps into the guarded walls he'd built. "Thanks for checking in." Ethan nodded, knowing the burden wasn't his to carry. Uncertainty brewed within him about the emotional scars they had inflicted upon one another. Wounds would linger, but he wouldn't be pulled into a cycle of blame or resentment. Over time, Ethan forged ahead with newfound resolution, throwing himself into work and creating a supportive network beyond what they once shared. He began mentoring local teens who had similarly faced adversity, pouring into them the lessons learned from his experiences, channeling each breakup into a platform for kindness. As the months elapsed, he began to see the transformative effects of his choices, not just on himself, but in how he raised his children. They too flourished, earning praise from teachers, friends, and coaches alike. The scars of betrayal became the tales of resilience, creating stories that were woven into the fabric of their growth. Ethan reflected on the past, the murky waters of betrayal and anguish, knowing that they had shaped him, hardened him. But now, he stood on the precipice of true fulfillment, having emerged not just as a survivor, but as a forerunner to lead others out of their shadows. With every sunrise, the burdens of the past dissipated further into the distance. And while wounds may not entirely heal, they faded from raw to scar, forming reminders of strength instead of heartbreak. In that newfound solace, he found hope, joy, and purpose. An open road ahead, one lined with the promise of tomorrow and filled with brighter possibilities. As autumn unfolded, the air crisped with the promise of change, and Ethan felt a potent sense of renewal coursing through his veins. The tumultuous summer had transformed into a season of introspection, and the leaves, once vibrantly green, now painted the world in rich hues of orange and gold. He stood on the precipice of a new chapter in his life. The shadows of betrayal had dimmed, replaced by the brightness of resilience and newfound purpose. Ethan had turned his energies toward the community, engaging in mentorship programs that inspired underprivileged youth to rise against their circumstances. With every week, he delivered motivational workshops at local schools, telling stories of personal strife and rebirth. The kids hung on to his every word, a direct contrast to the empty echo of resentment that had once filled his heart. It was cathartic, both for them and for him. Each interaction became a reminder that pain could be reshaped into power, and David and Sarah's betrayal would not define him. At home, his connection with his children deepened further, enriched by their shared experiences and laughter. They often spent weekends hiking in the nearby mountains, trekking through trails lit by warm sunlight. Ethan taught them about nature, about endurance, and about the necessity of rising after every fall. Each conquered summit reinforced the idea that challenges could be overcome, and every obstacle would eventually yield to determination. But beneath the surface of their idyllic family life, Ethan felt the nagging sense of unresolved tensions. Sarah wasn't rearing her head much. They had settled into a smooth co-parenting routine, but whispers began to circulate, primarily fueled by the gossip of their former friends. Ethan learned that Sarah was struggling not just socially but financially as well, and the troubles that had rooted themselves in their past now seemed to burgeon within her present. When he spotted her at school events or community gatherings, she wore a mask of forced cheerfulness, but cracks were beginning to form in that facade. Conversations crept around him, commenting on how she had lost both standing and community support. Sympathy and judgment merged into a haze of complexity. There was a certain satisfaction in knowing that she was experiencing consequences, but it stirred a different kind of discomfort within him. Was he reveling in her misery? One Friday evening, while preparing dinner, Ethan received a text message that made his breath catch. A request from Sarah asking if they could meet to discuss the children. The ping of the message sent a jolt through him. It felt so strange that he hesitated before replying. After a few moments, Ethan accepted the invitation, preparing himself for an encounter that could veer in any direction. They agreed to meet at a cafe downtown, a neutral ground where emotions could simmer but not explode. As he entered, he spotted Sarah seated in a corner booth, an uncharacteristic aura of vulnerability enveloping her. She was never one to shy away from confrontation, yet something about her demeanor hinted at a depth she had yet to mine. "Thanks for meeting me," she said, her voice a whisper. She ran her fingers through her hair, a sign of tension. "I know we've been busy, but I wanted to talk." "About the kids?" Ethan asked, his voice stern but laced with curiosity. "Yes, but also about other things. I've been struggling with, well, everything. I wish I could have done things differently." The words dripped with genuine reflection. Ethan could sense the sincerity lacing her admission. "Like neglecting the life we built?" he countered, trying to hold on to the resolve he had cultivated. "It's difficult for me to look back. I spent years trusting you." Sarah's gaze fell to her lap. She appeared smaller, almost a shell of the confident woman he had once known. "I know, and I've been working to rebuild my life. It's just been harder than I can express," she murmured. "I can't seem to connect with people like I used to." Ethan felt the cold walls around his heart shudder slightly, as the tokens of his own anger began to dissolve. "What do you want, Sarah?" he asked bluntly, not wanting to wade into the depths of sympathy without purpose. "I want to make amends with you, not just for my mistakes, but for the kids. You're doing an incredible job raising them, and I can see how happy they are," she offered, her voice quaking with emotion. "But I also want a chance to be a real mother, to step into my role. I don't expect everything to magically resolve, but I want to try to be better, for them and for me." Ethan paused. The sincerity in her voice struck him like a hammer against the walls he had put up. This wasn't a call for reconciliation, but an acknowledgement of a past marred by choices that had undermined their family. As he weighed her words carefully, he sensed the depths of her suffering interlaced with the burden he had carried. "I can't just forget everything that happened," he stated, searching her eyes for sincerity. "I wouldn't expect you to," she responded, "but I'm trying to take responsibility. I know it's late, but I've realized how much I took for granted." A moment of reconciliation hung in the air, quietly pulsing with momentum that felt new. She had come, raw and unguarded, without the defensive shield he had often encountered. It rattled him, and for the first time, Ethan saw her as someone who wasn't simply a perpetrator of his pain, but a human being who had erred. "I'll think about it," he said finally, choosing his words with caution. "But if you want to be involved in our children's lives, you'll have to show consistency. Trust is earned, and it takes time." "Yes, absolutely," Sarah replied, her eyes sparkling with a touch of hope. "I just want to be a better person. For my children, for myself. I've learned so much from my mistakes, and I'm trying to turn things around." That night marked a pivot in the labyrinthine path they had walked together, through betrayal and heartache, now inching toward potential growth. With tentative steps into the unknown, Ethan realized that healing wasn't a linear journey, nor was it solely about revenge. It was about forging ahead, lifting the weight of the past, and allowing space for change to blossom. In the weeks that followed, Ethan witnessed a slight change in Sarah. She began attending community events, typically involving their children. There was a tangible effort. The children, initially skeptical, slowly warmed to her renewed presence, and he found himself shifting from resentment to cautious optimism as the shadows of their past began to dim. Ethan was always careful to keep a protective boundary, monitoring the transformation with a guarded heart. They still had moments, sometimes painful, sometimes awkward, but Sarah's efforts began to paint a narrative that made space for possibility. He decided to approach this newfound relationship with vigilance, but he also embraced the reality that growth, even on a fractured ground, could yield unexpected blossoms. As winter approached, the air once again sparkled with the promise of renewal. Ethan had learned that healing didn't hinge solely on closure. It flowed from understanding and, quite remarkably, forgiveness. Not just for her, but for himself. In that quiet December, he gathered his children and shared his own journey, teaching them that life's complexities often harbored the chance for second chances. There, amid the lights of a freshly decorated Christmas tree, he watched as their laughter echoed around him, filling the room with warmth. New beginnings don't promise a resolution to the past, Ethan realized. Instead, it's about painting over the scars, honoring their stories, and embracing the present as it unfolds. Each smile, each laugh shared, was a testament to resilience, to love, and above all, to the possibility of rebuilding even after life's greatest betrayals. As winter deepened, it brought with it the serenity of freshly fallen snow and the bittersweet nostalgia of the holiday season. Ethan appreciated the glowing warmth of his home, the light emanating from the decorations, and the joyful sounds of his children bubbling with excitement. The recent developments with Sarah had surprised him. Her genuine efforts to reconnect felt like a breath of fresh air. However, he remained cautious, aware that old habits could resurface at any moment. With the holidays approaching, Ethan decided to host a small gathering for close friends and family, creating an atmosphere of warmth and connection he longed to foster. The idea excited his children, who could hardly wait to invite their friends. Turns out, the holidays were a perfect excuse for joy and celebration. However, as the date crept closer, anxiety began to creep into the corners of Ethan's mind. Would Sarah come? How would the children react if she did? Would this gathering stir feelings of tension instead of festivity? He kept these thoughts at bay while ensuring that the decorations were perfect, the food abundant, and the atmosphere welcoming. When the day arrived, laughter filled the air as friends and family crowded into the living room, transforming it into a warm hub of camaraderie. Ethan felt a flutter of joy and relief as he watched his children interact with their friends, their laughter like music filling the spaces between the decorations. But amid the joy, he knew someone was missing. He had invited Sarah, unsure of how that might affect everyone involved. As guests poured into the gathering, the doorbell chimed through the jubilant chaos, and Ethan's heart raced. He opened the door to find Sarah standing on the threshold, holding a small gift and gazing nervously at the warm glow radiating from the home. "Hey," she said softly, an awkward smile playing on her lips. "Hey," Ethan replied, mustering a casual smile that felt unfamiliar. He stepped aside to let her in. "I'm glad you came." Inside, the ambiance enveloped them both. Humor and chatter swirled around like the sweet scent of cinnamon and pine. The children, oblivious to their parents' complicated exchanges, bounded over excitedly to greet Sarah, and her demeanor shimmered with genuine delight. "Mommy!" his youngest child exclaimed, wrapping her tiny arms around Sarah's waist, who knelt down to bask in the love before her. Ethan observed a unique mix of apprehension and hope brewing within him. The evening unfolded without incident. Drinks were poured, stories shared, and the sound of laughter reverberated off the walls, like an invitation to lightheartedness. As the night advanced, Sarah transitioned seamlessly into her role as mother, chatting with the children and playing games with mischievous delight. There was a palpable ease in the air. The atmosphere felt almost like a reunion of the family they had once been. Ethan engaged in conversation with close friends, stealing glances at Sarah, who was animatedly directing a game of charades with the kids. For the first time in a long while, he felt something he hadn't prepared for: a glimmer of hope. Looks like she's really trying, one of his friends nudged him, breaking Ethan's contemplation. Yeah, Ethan replied, trying to ground himself. But let's not get ahead of ourselves. We've been through a lot. True, but growth is a wonderful thing, his friend countered, and maybe it's worth a second chance, don't you think? Ethan considered the sentiment. He could sense a revolution inside him, the pang of frustration and distrust tempering into a cautious curiosity. It was an unsettling concoction of feelings, fueled by uncertainty about what the future might hold. As the night deepened and the decorations glimmered under the soft lighting, Ethan found himself caught up in a fleeting moment, the tranquility of a family gathering. The children giggled, arms outstretched to Sarah as they attempted a game that flirted with chaos. Memories of what they'd had before poured forth unbidden, the laughter twining tightly around his heart, but darkness whispered at the edges of his joy. He had to remain alert, to measure the distance between the childlike hopes of the evening and the harsh realities that still clung to their past. At the gathering's peak, the children settled down to enjoy holiday cookies and cocoa, and Ethan glanced at Sarah, catching her gaze. She held a bittersweet smile, a reflection of the same simmering fight he had felt long ago. He gestured for her to join him away from the noise, hoping the two of them could converse without distraction. "Can we talk?" he asked softly, and Sarah nodded, following him to a quieter corner of the living room. "Ethan, I want to express how grateful I am for letting me be here tonight. Seeing the kids happy means everything to me." "I appreciate that, Sarah. But I need you to know it doesn't erase everything that happened. It's not that straightforward." "I understand," she replied, her voice laced with sincerity. "I want to show you that I'm really trying. It's hard to describe how deeply I regret my past choices, and I realize it will take time for you to fully trust me again. But please know I want to rebuild those bridges." Ethan pondered her words. He saw the truth underlying her yearning. "Time is essential. But I want you to understand that I will always protect the kids. If this is going to work, it requires transparency and respect from both of us." "Absolutely. I want to be someone you can rely on. I want the kids to feel safe. We may have to balance this as we go along, and I'm committed to doing it." The weight of the conversation lingered between them, a silent acknowledgement of everything they had shared and what lay uncertain ahead. As they returned to the gathering, Ethan felt the pause of history binding their consciousness, reminding them that they were on a shared journey, one potentially riddled with challenges, yet promising hope. Moments turned into hours as the gathering drew closer to a close. The evening ended with joy-filled hugs and warm farewells, tightening the bond of relationships that had sometimes faltered and strained. As guests departed, leaving behind the remnants of the celebration, Ethan felt the quietude settle, wrapping around them like a tender embrace. With the children nestled into their beds and the home winding down, Sarah lingered at the doorway, looking uncertain and hopeful all at once. "Thank you for sharing this night with me," she said softly, brushing an invisible tuft of hair from her forehead, "and for the chance to reconnect." "Let's take it one step at a time," Ethan said, offering a careful smile. "I can do that," she replied with gentle resolve, her expression earnest. As she turned to leave, he felt something shift within him again, a desire for understanding amidst lingering caution. The world, their world, could very well begin anew, but the necessity of watching each step remained foremost in his mind. The following weeks were filled with little victories, small moments where Sarah demonstrated dedication to rekindling her role as a mother, while earnestly attempting to establish boundaries with Ethan that mirrored comprehension. She asked them to have dinner together occasionally, and he found himself reciprocating with ease. The children thrived on the interaction. Confidence rekindled softly within their hearts. As they traversed this territory, Ethan often wondered if Sarah's presence rebuilt the bridges that had once burned. He knew only time would tell. But on this night, as the last remnants of the holiday season faded into the warmth of shared humanity, he couldn't help but feel that perhaps life had something beautiful waiting in the wings once again, a chance to form new memories that honored both the past and the present. With that thought nestled in his heart, Ethan felt ready, not just for the future, but for the opportunity to redefine what it meant to be whole again. At the threshold of a new beginning, he steadied himself, guiding acceptance along the pathway of uncertainty. In a world often shrouded in gray, he sought to paint it vibrant, tilting toward the vibrancy of healing, belief, and love. As winter deepened, it blanketed the world outside in soft white, transforming the landscape into a quiet wonderland. Inside, Ethan felt additional transformations stirring within him. Lessons learned from losses, resilience forged in fire, and a cautious yet hopeful spirit beginning to mean something deeper. Though he was moving forward, life revealed to him that the journey was rarely linear. After the holiday gathering, Sarah continued to show up for their children, gradually integrating herself into their lives in a way that seemed genuine. Ethan could see the joy it brought the kids, which in turn ignited something within him. Despite the scar tissue left from their past, he found himself cautiously accepting her presence at family events, school functions, and even casual hangouts with friends. However, the whispered doubts that had thrummed in his mind since their separation still echoed faintly. Ethan remained aware that change, although genuine on Sarah's end, came layered with complexities. Could they rebuild trust? Was anything truly different this time? As February approached, Ethan made plans to take the children on a weekend trip to the mountains for some skiing, something they hadn't done in years. He thought it would be an excellent opportunity to bond, create new memories, and perhaps even invite Sarah. After considerable deliberation, he decided it was time. "Hey, I'm going on a weekend trip with the kids next week." He floated the idea to her while they prepared dinner together, an act of domesticity that had become more natural over time. "I was wondering if you'd like to join us?" Her expression lit up momentarily, genuine excitement evident in her demeanor, but it quickly morphed into uncertainty. "Really? You want me to come with you?" "Yeah," he replied, maintaining a casual tone even as he felt his heart race. "But I need to be clear, this is still about the kids. I think it could be fun for all of us." A glimmer of hope flickered in her eyes, a reflection of yearning for connection, perhaps. But her hesitation lingered. "Are you sure it won't be awkward?" "I wouldn't want to overstep." "It won't be if we keep our focus on the kids," he assured her, already feeling a mix of optimism and apprehension. "Just think of it as a family outing." "All right," she finally said, a genuine smile emerging. "I'd love to join you." The following week, the family found themselves nestled in a cozy cabin near the ski slopes, surrounded by breathtaking views of glistening snow-capped mountains. The air was crisp and scented with pine, infused with the laughter of children eager to hit the slopes. The evening they arrived, they played board games by the fireplace, the crackling flames creating a warm cocoon away from the chill outside. It felt like a small miracle, a transition from the tumultuous history to the lighthearted nostalgia of family gatherings. As they prepared for a day of skiing the following morning, Ethan couldn't shake the feeling that this was an opportunity for genuine reconnection. He watched as Sarah assisted their children in getting equipped with their ski gear, her genuine enthusiasm engaging them with warmth and admiration. It stirred a sense of contentment within him that had long been dormant. Once outside on the slopes, he felt a rush of exhilaration envelop them. They tackled easy trails, laughter bubbling over as the kids stumbled and fell, only to get back up again. Ethan felt a piece of his heart thaw with the joy surrounding him, realizing how much they had missed experiencing moments like this together. At one point, while waiting for the kids to catch their breath, Sarah turned to Ethan. "You know, I've really missed this. I've taken so much for granted. The time we had together, the family I thought would always be there." Her eyes glistened with sincerity. It was as if she was revealing layers of herself that hadn't entirely healed, singeing past wounds. "Things change," Ethan said, leaning on his ski poles. "But what matters is how we move forward. I want to contribute to that future, to give the kids the family they've always deserved," Sarah whispered, and suddenly, the weight of her words weighed heavily in the brisk air. "Let's focus on today first," he replied with a gentle smile, wanting to avoid the depth of their conversation creeping back into their hearts. It's a beautiful day to make memories. They spent hours on the slopes, moving effortlessly between laughter and focused concentration as the kids learned to ski better with each attempt. Sarah navigated the trails adeptly and encouraged the children like a natural, a role she had once struggled with, but appeared to have evolved into seamlessly. Watching her interact with the kids, Ethan felt something again, an inkling of respect rebuilding, as if the fragile walls between them were muttering a promise of forgiveness and growth with every action. That evening, they returned to the cabin, the exhilaration of the day wrapped around them like a warm blanket. After dinner, they all gathered around the living room. A fireplace crackled invitingly in the background, casting a soft glow through the room. Ethan's son turned to him, eyes sparkling. "Dad, can we play that card game we brought?" "Of course," Ethan replied with a genuine smile. Sarah joined in as they set up the game, and laughter soon filled the cabin as they competed against one another with vigor and humor. Once everything quieted down and the children excused themselves to bed, Ethan found himself sitting next to Sarah on the couch. The faint light of the embers filled the room with a soft glow that illuminated the unsteady path they had walked. "Today was incredible," Sarah said, breaking the silence. "Thank you for allowing me to share this time with you and the kids." "It means more than I can express." Ethan turned to her, wanting to say more, free his thoughts from all the weight of the past. "You know," he started carefully, "it's important for me to believe that this isn't just a temporary phase. I need to see real change. Not just for me, but for the kids too." "I understand," she replied, "and I am ready to invest in this space. No more running or hiding from the consequences of my actions." In that moment, a clearer path began to forge itself between them. It felt as if they were standing at the edge of a chasm, but refusing to let the fears of the past define the leap forward. "Let's take small steps. I want you to be present in our kids' lives, and I want to believe that we can navigate this carefully together," Ethan said, feeling the weight of both caution and possibility intertwining. He could feel her nod, her eyes resolute yet filled with emotion. They lingered there, not as husband and wife, but as two very different people united by a shared purpose, to forge a family dynamic rooted in acceptance, understanding, and love for the children. The weekend drew to a close, and as they returned home, Ethan felt oddly uplifted despite the lingering tension that always lingered in the background. They had ventured into a delicate new phase. The light that illuminated their path forward wasn't burning bright, but was steady, incandescent with promise. In the weeks that followed, their co-parenting began taking on new momentum. Lunches with the kids turned into casual dinners, and before long, Ethan found himself engaging in deeper conversations with Sarah. They could acknowledge the past with an understanding that it didn't need to overshadow their present. But along with budding optimism came the unsettling truth. Life would always seek to test their resolve and choices. With the past looming, the road ahead would still curve unexpectedly, forcing Ethan to remember the importance of vigilance, even amidst reconciliation. But despite the uncertainties that lay ahead, one truth rang clear. From each wound, each scar, arose the potential for growth and newfound love. And in that realization, there was still incredible power, one that stirred within him, propelling him forward on their journey toward healing and renewal. The beautiful chaos of life was unfolding before them both, woven intricately and textured with hope. As spring blossomed and muted transitions of winter gave way to vibrant colors, a sense of renewal pulsated through Ethan's life. The world outside was awakening again, echoing the healing within him. For the first time in a long while, he felt a burgeoning excitement about what lay ahead, not just for himself, but for the fragile new family dynamic he was constructing with Sarah. Days morphed into weeks, and with each passing moment, the scars from their past began to fade slightly, replaced by threads of tentative hope stitching their lives together. Ethan embraced the novelty of their evolving relationship, still remaining cautious, but allowing himself to enjoy the little interactions that now colored their co-parenting journey. They shared meal preparations, navigated homework together, and, surprisingly, even managed to laugh at the whirlwind of chaos that filled their household. One evening, while picking up the kids from school, Ethan spotted Sarah lingering near the entrance, a determined aura surrounding her as she spoke with one of the teachers. The sight of her self-assuredness, dressed in casual attire, yet full of purpose, struck a chord within him. The depths of her transformation were evident, and he felt an unexpected flicker of admiration. "Hey, you!" she called out cheerfully when she noticed him approaching, eyes brightening at his presence. "Hey!" he replied, feeling a rush of warmth fill the space between them. "How was it?" "Good. We're talking about an upcoming school play, and I think the kids are really excited," she said, her animated smile contagious. "Did they encourage you to get involved?" Ethan teased lightly. He knew how daunting the thought of a school production could be. "Ha! I don't know about performing on stage, but I'm definitely considering helping out in some capacity," she admitted, her laughter ringing through the air. The exchange felt effortless, the camaraderie blending seamlessly into the flow of their day. They walked side by side, catching up casually while their children dashed ahead, enveloped in their small universe of excitement. Ethan marveled, not just at how easy it was to converse with Sarah, but at how this slowly blossoming connection was reshaping his memories with her. The chaotic past didn't bind him anymore. He began to see possibilities laced with intrigue instead. As the warmer weather settled in, they began planning weekend outings centered around family bonding. Neighborhood picnics turned into hikes, school events turned into opportunities for cooperative interaction. The children thrived in the newfound unity. They reveled in seeing their parents work together rather than drift apart. One sunny Saturday afternoon, they planned an outing to a local zoo. Ethan felt the joy radiate from the kids as they rushed ahead to see the animals. He walked alongside Sarah, discussing the schedule of events mapped out for the day, and exchanging laughs as they reminisced about their childhood trips to similar attractions. "Do you think we'll actually manage to see everything?" Sarah grinned, pushing an errant strand of hair behind her ear as they passed through the entry gates. "Only if we race." "Let's see who can spot the lions first," Ethan challenged, feigning competitiveness. "Challenge accepted," she laughed, and they raced toward the exhibit, their children trailing behind. After a day filled with laughter, animal encounters, and playful banter, Ethan felt a satisfaction swell within him. They had managed to craft joyful experiences, even amidst the chaos of shared history. Watching them, he couldn't help but envision a future where they could coexist and perhaps thrive together. But just as the warmth of spring enveloped their unfolding relationship, the unpredictability of life once again stirred into action. A few days later, as Ethan worked late on a project, he received a frantic call from Sarah. "Ethan, I need to talk to you. It's urgent." Panic laced her voice, sending a sharp jolt of concern through him. "What is it? Is everything okay?" he asked, immediately alert. "I just found out that the company I work for is laying off several employees, including my department." "I don't know what I'm going to do." Her voice trembled, a fissure of uncertainty echoing through the line. A wave of empathy washed over Ethan. He had seen the circumstances unraveling in her world, and it stung to hear her facing yet another challenge. "Can you come over?" he suggested, even as a twinge of apprehension flickered within him. Despite their growing bond, he was aware that their past had yet to be completely dismantled. "Yeah, I'll be right there." Shortly after, Sarah arrived, visibly distressed. Ethan ushered her inside, and they both settled in the cozy living room, where remnants of the day's chaos lingered. "Okay, let's talk. What happened?" he prompted gently. "I received a notice earlier today that my position is being eliminated by the end of the month. I thought my performance had been solid, but now I'm left with nothing but uncertainty," she said, her features contorted in worry that touched his heart. Ethan instinctively took her hand, a gesture that felt both new and habitual. "I know this is overwhelming," he said, searching for a way to offer reassurance. "But you're resilient. You'll find another job. It might take some time, but you've dealt with tough situations before." "You don't understand. I don't just need another job. I need stability for the kids, especially with everything that's changed. I can't let them down again," she said, tears brimming in her eyes. You won't. You're not the only one who can help. We can figure out a plan together, Ethan suggested, bolstering her spirits but feeling the weight of doubt creeping in. Together? Sarah echoed, her voice thick with emotion. The line between gratitude and vulnerability blurred in her gaze. Yes, we're still co-parents. We're better together, remember? He reminded her, determined to build strength through collaboration, navigating challenges as a united front. After a long conversation exploring different options, they devised a plan targeting her strengths and previous experiences while considering flexible roles that might suit her needs. They brainstormed ideas, defining avenues she could explore, eventually feeling hopeful as they shifted from despair to resilience. I guess I thought I could handle everything on my own. I didn't want to burden you with my problems, she admitted, her voice softening as gratitude filled the space between them. That's not how this works. We've both learned hard lessons about dependence. You don't need to carry the weight alone anymore. We are here for each other. As the evening unfolded and their conversation continued, Ethan felt a flicker of camaraderie reignite between them, a connection reborn from chaos and trust, reminding him of the possibility of hope even amidst darkness. They each provided support through their shared parenting responsibilities, and he realized he could witness Sarah's true potential shine through. As weeks passed, Sarah began her job search in earnest, buoyed by the collaborative spirit they had fostered. Ethan offered help with her resume, and together they practiced for interviews, pouring time and energy into rekindling the confidence that had waned. The dynamic continued to shift from past trauma toward teamwork, emphasizing stability and shared values. In the evenings, they often found themselves sharing stories, personal goals, and plans for the future, layered with a warmth that they hadn't anticipated. A shared sense of resilience burgeoned, allowing them to face what came next. The vibrant spring days built an underlying energy that buzzed with possibilities, inviting previously dormant hopes to resurface. In those moments, Ethan recognized that their journey, a path marred by betrayal, was slowly transforming into an adventure, rich with commitment and growth. Through every twist and turn, their connection blossomed, punctuated with the promise of a more solid foundation rooted in support, understanding, and renewed love for their children. As they would navigate this new terrain together, it became clear that the past was not merely a recalled memory. It forged the landscape of their future, a testament to growth, trust, and the undeniable strength found in family, mismatched as it may have been. As spring transitioned into the warmth of summer, Ethan's home brimmed with energy and laughter that resonated through the walls, echoing the newfound unity between him and Sarah. Their relationship had evolved, shifting from past grievances to a collaboration that focused primarily on their children, but now included deeper conversations that revealed personal growth. Each shared moment slowly obliterated lingering shadows of mistrust, illuminating a pathway toward hope. Sarah continued her job search, poring over job boards at coffee shops, armed with her polished resume and a resilient spirit. Their evenings were filled with their children's laughter and the aroma of dinner simmering on the stove, yet within that warmth was also urgency, the feeling that both parents needed to succeed to create a solid foundation for their kids. Ethan found himself swelling with pride as Sarah often shared stories of interviews and networking events, her enthusiasm contagious. He felt something shift, honors the glimpses of the woman who had once dreamt of greater things, confined by momentary missteps. One balmy evening, as dusk cast a soft, golden hue across their backyard, the children played exuberantly in the grass, a swarm of scattered energy that brought life to the space around them. Ethan and Sarah settled at the patio table, a semblance of normalcy emerging between them. "Can you believe how much they've grown?" Sarah asked, leaning back in her chair. "It feels like just yesterday they were newborns." "I know," Ethan chuckled, a fond smile breaking across his face as he watched their children running toward the small wooden swing. The contrast between his previous isolation and present camaraderie surged within him, filling him with an unexpected warmth. Amid sunlight and laughter, Sarah's laughter brought him back to the present. We should plan a summer getaway, a real one, just the four of us. They deserve a proper vacation after all the changes. Ethan felt a flicker of excitement as the idea took root in his mind. That could be great. A little family trip to the beach, maybe? Somewhere we can unwind and just enjoy each other's company without a care in the world. Yes! The kids would just love that. Sarah's enthusiasm ignited something within him, an instinctual rush of hopefulness. I can start looking for places to stay. Let's aim for something spacious. Maybe a cabin close to the ocean, one with games and activities. They both leaned into the idea, planning as if they were weaving a tapestry of memories waiting to be filled with laughter and adventure. That night, with the previous day's excitement still tingling in their veins, Ethan descended into slumber with renewed optimism. The next morning, Sarah reached out about their trip planning. Ideas turned into visions and itineraries of a celebration that transcended challenges and fears. As the days unfolded, their focus on preparation for the vacation became a joyful diversion from Sarah's ongoing job search. They mapped out their route, picked an ideal time frame, and even collaborated on snacks for the road trip. Previewing potential activities, whether it was building sandcastles or sampling ice cream, invigorated their spirits. However, just as the pieces began fitting together seamlessly, a storm swept unexpectedly through Sarah's world. One afternoon, after repeatedly seeking opportunities, she received a rejection from a company she had applied to, a company she'd felt was destined to hire her. The news landed heavily. Her hopes suddenly spiraled. Ethan found her in the living room, heavy-eyed and sunk into the couch. "Sarah," he said cautiously, marking the stark contrast between her demeanor and the vibrant energy they had shared in the days leading up to it. "Hey," she answered, her voice barely above a whisper. "Did something happen?" he asked, knowing the answer before she even spoke. "I thought I nailed the interview, Ethan." "They said they were impressed, but then I received an email saying they went in another direction," she choked out, anguish flickering in her eyes as they pooled with unshed tears. "I'm so sorry," he said, coming to sit beside her. He extended an arm around her shoulders, pulling her close. "You're talented, and your time will come. This doesn't define you." "I know, but I just can't shake this feeling that I'm letting everyone down. I can't provide for the kids, like I always envisioned," she confessed, her voice tremulous as she buried her face in her hands. Ethan's heart ached at her vulnerability. It's okay to feel disappointed, but don't forget that you're not alone in this. You're doing more than you realize, and the kids see your effort. They love you for it. At times, it just feels impossible, she said quietly, brushing a tear away that had slipped free. "I don't want to revert to old habits, to the way we used to be. A string of disappointments." "Then let's face this together," he replied, feeling a rush of responsibility. "We'll keep pushing forward. We can run through more applications together, work on your interview technique, and—" "I can't ask you to do that," she interrupted, her expression shifting, vulnerability morphing into frustration. "You've been so generous already. I feel like a burden." "Stop," Ethan insisted gently. "You're my co-parent, Sarah. I offered to help, and that includes this. Remember, it's equally important to lift one another up." Even through the depths of despair, warmth flickered in her smile as she looked up at him. "You really mean it?" "Of course. We're in this together, remember? I don't want to lose what we've built, and I believe in you." With a deep breath, Sarah nodded slowly. "Thank you. I just need to recalibrate everything." As days passed, Ethan saw Sarah fight through the mire surrounding her, pouring her soul into job hunting with renewed vigor. Eventually, she began noticing small successes, filling out applications with focus, gaining the confidence to brush aside the weight of rejection that had once pinned her down. He could sense a spark reigniting within her as they mapped potential job pathways together. Doing practice interviews, that seemed to uplift her spirits from despair to hope. Just a few weeks later, after a long day of juggling various responsibilities, while preparing dinner, Ethan noticed the email notifications from Sarah's phone buzz on the kitchen counter. A familiar thrill raced through him as he glimpsed her screen and saw an icon indicating interview details from a company she had recently targeted. Sarah entered the room, her expression glowing with anticipation. "Guess what? I just landed an interview for next week. That's fantastic." "I knew you'd find something. We need to celebrate." Ethan felt a rush of pride and excitement. Over the next few days, they committed to diligent preparation for the interview, covering all crucial points, rehearsing answers, and motivating each other through the uncertainty. When the interview day finally arrived, a mix of nerves and excitement enveloped Sarah. Ethan watched her get ready, her confidence starting to shine through the layers of self-doubt. "You've got this," he encouraged, smoothing out her attire. Later that evening, when she returned, her face painted in a mix of anxiety and hope sent Ethan's heart racing. "How did it go?" he asked, barely containing his eagerness. Sarah's smile broke like dawn piercing through darkness. "I think I did well. They seemed pleased with my answers, and I could really see myself fitting in with their team." "That's incredible. You deserve every ounce of happiness," he replied, beaming with pride at her tenacity. Days melted into another week, and the anticipation pulsed through their lives. Waiting on the outcome of her efforts began to feel tangible, a blend of hope and guarded optimism woven throughout their interactions. Then, one fateful afternoon, as Ethan helped the kids with homework, his phone buzzed, the screen lighting up with Sarah's name. "Hey, what's up?" he answered, expecting nothing more than casual updates or trip details. Instead, their conversation began with quiet hesitation. "Ethan, I got the job offer." Sarah's words rushed out, ringing with pent-up excitement reverberating through the line. "Are you serious?" he exclaimed, the joy tumbling from his lips. "You did it!" "Yeah, I start next month, and I'm just over the moon right now." Ethan could hardly contain his enthusiasm. "This calls for a celebration. I'm so proud of you." "I couldn't have done it without you." "Thank you for sticking with me through all of it." As Ethan placed the phone down, he felt the warmth of possibilities bloom around them. It was through sheer resilience that they had redefined the contours of their lives. They would navigate the twists of life together, not just as co-parents, but as a family ready to tackle the future. As summer approached, planning for the beach getaway blended seamlessly with their growing ambitions. They laughed more, enjoyed deeper conversations, and carved out time for the kids that transcended the mundane, transforming it into precious moments. In the end, all these experiences assembled the vibrant mosaic of life, not factored by the past, but by intentional relationships. Whatever lay ahead with forging paths together and navigating life's uncertainties hand in hand, Ethan envisioned the creation of a new legacy, a love story steeped in resilience, a tapestry spun from threads of hope. The journey unspooled vividly ahead, ready to embrace the brilliance of new beginnings.